Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and I have just watched the Mexican Grand Prix of 2021, and it was a good race. There was not a lot of overtaking, and I think this race is another example of the problems with this current regulations of Formula 1 with turbulent air and how that makes it difficult to overtake. There was a lot of that. There's more of that than there was overtaking. But this was another dominant win for Max Verstappen, and he now has a 19-point lead as we go into the last 4 races. That is a good number to have. That is almost a race in hand. With only 4 races left, that's a pretty good advantage to have. He really only needs to drive sensibly, take as many points as he can from here. I don't want to see him getting caught up in any incidents. Hopefully reliability holds on and he can get the Red Bull to the line in the last 4 races of the year. I don't want him to lose the championship like that, not after the year he's had. And this was a masterclass once again from Verstappen, because that start, the slipstream, getting alongside both Mercedes, getting around the outside, not getting caught up with the carnage, and then just pulling away. And we didn't really see much of him in this race. He was pulling a very healthy advantage from lap 1. Well, no, lap 2 because of the safety car, I suppose. As soon as he got away, he was gone. And I think that will worry Mercedes, because I think they know that it's probably going to be the same case in Sao Paulo. And if Red Bull take another big swing in both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships in Brazil, they are going to have to catch up at the last 3 Middle East rounds. So it's still all to play for. It's still pretty close, not just between Verstappen and Hamilton, but Perez and Bottas as well. This was a disaster for Valtteri Bottas, who has been driving better of late, and he did a good job to get pole position for this race. Did not need to be taken out. And it was a clumsy first corner. He got tagged by Ricciardo and there was sort of cars everywhere. I think Bottas was lucky to actually survive the first corner. I think he could have easily been tagged by just about anyone coming through. After that, it was just a race of disasters for him. Getting stuck behind Ricciardo for the majority of the race. The bad pit stop. He did his job in getting fastest lap at the end. But no points scored for him, and with Perez scoring 15... it's another big swing in the fight for third. And Perez just isn't that far behind anymore. So that's all to play for as we go into the last 4 rounds. I think Red Bull, I don't want to say they have it, because if they lose it, it's the season they've had, they deserve to be champions. They've made massive gains this year. They're about on par with Mercedes, to be honest. I still don't think they're in any way ahead. I just think Max Verstappen is driving really well. It's taken Sergio Perez a while to get used to the car, I think. But he's there now and he's doing his job as the second Red Bull driver. He's scoring points. He's being part of strategies and keeping up with Lewis Hamilton. Alright, he couldn't quite overtake him, but again, it's difficult to overtake. There was not a lot of overtaking, so third place is still a great result for him. And in Mexico as well, the first Mexican to lead a lap of the Mexican Grand Prix, the first Mexican on the podium. That will be really the pinnacle of his career, maybe even more than winning. I think the home race is special to a lot of drivers. So I think Sergio will be very, very proud of himself this weekend for the job he's done for Red Bull and himself. As for Lewis Hamilton, he just didn't have enough to really compete with Verstappen. He was left in the dust. He did well to hold off Perez. It was a sensible drive from him. There was no real mistakes. That's as good as it could get for him. I don't think he had anything in reserve, so it's going to be interesting to see how Mercedes perform in Brazil. But if Red Bull have an advantage there as well, then Mercedes are going to be clawing back what they can over the last few rounds in the championship. Now, as to everyone else, Gasly had a very quiet race in 4th, But it's a great result for AlphaTauri. Really brings them up to Alpine. It's a shame for Tsunoda because he looked quick. He was at the back because of penalties. And he got taken out in the first corner melee. Not really his fault, it was just there were cars everywhere. But the Japanese driver has been driving well, and he deserves to be higher than he is. I know a lot of people have been saying he's a disappointment. It's not all his fault, he has made mistakes. I still think he's driving brilliantly. He's just struggling to get the end results, which matter at the end of the day. But he's got another season, so he's got time to learn and grow. We'll see how he does next year. Hopefully he can get a few points finishes from the last few rounds. I think AlphaTauri have the pace to beat Alpine in the Constructors. Ferrari, they're in a deep battle with McLaren, but McLaren had a very bad day. And Ferrari capitalised, although they were quite a way off Gasly. I know Sainz was trying to catch him, and I think he got within about 6 or 7 seconds. Couldn't manage to get closer than that, so it's still good for Ferrari. They've scored enough points to get ahead of McLaren, and I think they are the third best team on the grid now. They're still quite a way off Red Bull and Mercedes, but they've got two good drivers and a car that's clearly improving. So they're going to be interesting to see next year. As for the inter-team fight, Sainz has done well to keep up with Leclerc, but Leclerc is starting to pull out a little bit of an advantage now. I think the battle with McLaren seems to be coming back towards them as well. Norris has not been doing as well in the last few rounds. So it's a tight battle still. As much as I like Ferrari and McLaren, they are two of the classic teams on the grid. I am very excited to see them fight for Constructors' honours. It was a good race for both Leclerc and Sainz. Nothing special, we didn't really see much of them. They did their job. Vettel in 7th. Brilliant job from him. A good strategy from Aston Martin as well. He's had a good season, really. I've not seen anything too... I mean, apart from that disqualification in Hungary, which second place, it's a big loss of points to get disqualified from. Vettel's had a very good season. He's been driving very, very well. At the level Aston Martin are, he's probably slightly exceeding expectations. And this was another good points haul to take towards the end of the season. Alonso behind him. No, Raikkonen behind him. Raikkonen, amazing drive. Alfa Romeo haven't really looked on pace all season. And Raikkonen just seems to have come alive the last few races. Giovinazzi, he did well to get into 6th at the start, capitalising on other people's misfortunes. Finishing 11th, disappointing for him. If he loses his seat, I can see why. Alpine, Alonso did well to score points. Ocon had another bad race. Again, he was involved in the contact at the start. He had penalties to deal with on the grid. Not a great race for him. I think he was 13th, 12th or 13th. Pretty much invisible. Ocon, it's been a pretty shocking season, except the fact that he won a race. If he hadn't won that race, I think he'd be behind Tsunoda in the points. I think he's got 46, so he scored more than half his points in that one race. Since then, he's had some shocking results. Haven't really seen much of him. Now, I kind of did expect better from him this season. But I think he's another one. He's just going to be taking what points he can towards the end. Try and keep Alpine above AlphaTauri. I think that's going to be a tight fight. And I think Gasly, he's going to score enough points on his own to make it very difficult for Alpine. Anyone else? Norris, 10th place. Again, dealing with penalties. He managed to get a point out of it, but nothing special. And they lose ground to Ferrari. Giovinazzi in 11th. He did a fairly good job. Ricciardo had a bad race. Obviously, he took out Bottas at the start, lost his front wing. And then he was stuck down the back end of the field for most of the race. Ocon behind him. Stroll had a bad race. Saw him go off a couple of times. Did not make much progress. Bottas, pretty awful. Russell, Latifi and Mazepin behind. They were our last finishers. Mazepin actually was running as high as 12th. And was probably having his race of the season. He did hold off some better drivers for a time. But once again, he's finished last. So, nothing great to say. And as much as I big up Latifi as doing a good job for Williams, I think he was nearly 40 seconds behind Russell. That's too big a gap to be behind your teammate in a team like that. I think Russell had a bad race as well. He didn't seem to have the pace to feature. I thought it was only windy races that Williams were going to struggle at. Seems heat as well may not play into their hands. And of course, Tsunoda and Mick Schumacher didn't make it to the end. Caught up in that first corner melee. I don't really expect much from Mick Schumacher anyway. Tsunoda's a little bit disappointing. I think he could have been in the fight for the bottom end of the points. So that's the field. And with 4 races left, what are the main battles? Obviously Hamilton and Verstappen, Bottas and Perez, Mercedes versus Red Bull. I think Norris is far enough ahead of Leclerc and Sainz to hold on. But I think it's still going to be pretty close coming the end of the year if he doesn't start picking up more points. He's had a few bad races, Norris. I think at the moment Norris is still my driver of the year just for the early part of the season. But since Monza, it's gone really downhill. Ferrari versus McLaren. Again, it depends largely on Daniel Ricciardo. He needs to pick up points as well to keep McLaren ahead. But Ferrari definitely on the way up. It's going to be tough to hold them back. And the fact that they're now in front, I think they're going to extend their advantage towards the end of the year. Alpine versus AlphaTauri, as I've always said, I think Gasly alone gives AlphaTauri enough to keep them ahead. I think that's all the big fights. Down the bottom of the field, Raikkonen could catch Russell towards the end of the year if he keeps scoring points. That might be interesting. But as I said, this race, it was in no way a classic. As I said, there's not a lot of overtaking. There wasn't a lot of big battles through the field. It was mostly about managing the gaps. And that's probably not the most exciting thing in the world to watch. But it was kind of enthralling seeing these championship battles play out. And I think that sums up 2021, where the racing on the track is not necessarily good. There have been good races, there have been good moments. But a lot of the races have been this. There's a gap, but the championship is interesting. But we're not seeing overtaking, and we're not seeing multi-car battles and through the field. Like the midfield is very strung out in these races. Strategy, there's a lot of mistakes with strategy, especially with teams like Aston Martin and AlphaTauri and Alpine. I've seen a few where strategy has not necessarily played out. We saw with Alfa Romeo today when Giovinazzi pitted early to try and keep ahead of Vettel. Did not work out for him. I think maybe the regulations next year, I think especially the midfield, if cars can follow each other better and get into a position to overtake without, destroying the car, that's only a good thing. Especially in the midfield, where it should be a bit tighter. We might see more overtaking. It'll be interesting to compare the overtaking stats this year to next year. And, any way we can improve that, that's good with me. So, with that, thank you to all my subscribers, all more than 500 of you. If you haven't subscribed, you totally should. We're going to be watching very closely the end of the Formula 1 year. There's going to be lots more videos coming out, more content. I'm trying new things as well as doing some old things. Very excited for the end of the year. Leave your thoughts down into the comments and like and share and whatever. Thank you for watching and have a good one.